Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Markets are trading lower, as well as that some of our favorite stocks, including AI stocks, Tesla, Nvidia, and the likes. Here in this video, I will share with you all of your breaking news you need to know. Donald Trump says that China violated their preliminary agreement towards a trade deal. That obviously does not sound good, and China put in their own thoughts on this measure, referring to some of the semiconductor export controls that they are unhappy with. Now, it also looks like we are making some good progress with Japan and India on a potential trade deal. We did get, in other news, a lot of economic data that came out this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring this all to you in just a quick moment, including, as always, your Tesla stock breaking news, and there is quite a bit of it, so the work is cut out for us in this video. First things first, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and let's get started. First and foremost, Donald Trump says that China violated its agreement with the US. He wrote on Truth Social that China, perhaps not surprisingly to some, has totally violated its agreement with the US on tariffs. Trade Representative Greer says we have other tools if the tariff ruling goes the other way as well. He said this in a CNBC interview today, referring to the panel of 3 judges that shot down the tariffs. This is going to make its way all the way to the Supreme Court, and it's going to be a grueling, tedious process, so keep that in mind. He does say that tariff litigation is not hurting trade negotiation. Greer says that he had emails and texts from foreign officials saying, "We're just going to keep negotiating with you as before." That is in quotes. And U.S. Trade Representative Greer says the U.S. is very focused on monitoring China's compliance on trade. He also says that efforts for a Trump and Xi call are ongoing. Now, overnight last night, early this morning, Scott Besson actually said that at this point, the China tariff talks are stalled. That Trump and Xi need to have a conversation and where they stand and what they want. Or it's hard to get further progress at this point. Greer says on trade deals, quote, "We have a standing call with the Indian trade minister every day." So that India trade deal could be coming very soon. He says that China is slow on removing some tariff countermeasures. He says that we have meetings next week at the OECD with the Malaysians, the Vietnamese, and the EU, which is very important. Take a look at the clothes you have on, for an example. Odds are it probably comes from Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, or China. Greer says that China is the biggest trade deficit problem. The EU is next. And he says that he is going to meet his EU counterpart early next week. And he says we are not seeing major changes in China's behavior on trade. And he also says the US should have control over its critical sectors. Now, the US advanced goods trade balance came in at negative 87.6 billion. The forecast was negative 143 billion. The previous month was 163.17 billion. Here's what this means in English. We imported a lot less than we normally do. In fact, this was the largest drop in imports we have ever seen before. We've never seen a drop of imports on a month-over-month basis this large. Not during COVID, not during any recessions or depressions. We've never seen a drop like that. Again, that's kind of a good thing from a certain perspective because our trade deficit was a lot smaller, okay, just because we didn't import as much. That looks good from a headline GDP perspective. Following today's economic data, the estimate for Q2 GDP as of right now is coming in at 3.8%, up from 2.2% on May 27th. Okay, it says the nowcast of the contribution of net exports to second quarter real GDP growth increased from negative 0.64 percentage points to 1.45 percentage points. So it was a flip of about 2% on GDP, mainly because of the data that came out this morning. It says, while the nowcast of second quarter real personal consumption expenditures growth and second quarter real gross private domestic investment growth declined from 3.7% and negative 0.2% respectively to 3.3% and negative 1.4%. So real gross private domestic investment growth, that's really negative. So people are, again, as the Fed has said, are slowing down those investments. Also here on the day today, we had core PCE price index month over month that came in at positive 0.1%. That was in line with estimates. Personal income month over month skyrocketed to 0.8%. Expectations were 0.3%. Personal spending month over month came in line with expectations. So that's a good sign. We're just meeting expectations for the economy. Okay? The economy is not plummeting. People are still spending money. And keep in mind, last month was 0.7%. So when you're comparing month over month and you had a strong number last month and you had a positive number for this month, that's actually pretty good. You can't complain too much with that. Michigan consumer sentiment, final numbers for May came in at 52.2, beating estimates of 51. 5-year inflation expectations came down from the estimated 4.6%. The last number we had was 4.4%. They came down to 4.2%. So that was really good. Consumer expectations came in at 47.9. Expectation was 46.5. So that's good. Current conditions came in at 58.9. Expectation was 57.6. So that's good. And look at this. 1-year inflation expectations kind of plummeted versus expectations. Expectation was 7.3%. We actually came in at 6.6%, even though that's higher than the previous month of 6.5%. So actually, we did get some pretty good economic data this morning. Now, it was also reported last night that Trump and Jerome Powell had a meeting at the White House. There was no projections given for the path of rate cuts, at least not to us. I'm sure that happened, behind closed doors with, cameras turned off or whatnot. But one of the big things that Powell said was that if we see a shift in trade policies, if we see essentially less aggressive tariffs that don't pose as big of an inflation risk, we could get back on the path of rate cuts a lot sooner. Keep that in mind because I think that's something Trump is probably thinking about right now. Now, U.S. short-term interest rate futures pair earlier gains after PCE data. Traders keep bets on September Fed rate cut. U.S. Chicago PMIs came in at 40.5. The forecast was 45. So if there was any really just bad data today, it's probably that. But it's such a small data set, Wall Street really doesn't care about it. China's U.S. Embassy spokesperson says both China and the U.S. have maintained communication over their respective concerns in the economic and trade fields on various bilateral and multilateral occasions at multiple levels. He says that China has repeatedly raised concerns regarding the U.S.'s abuse of export control measures in the semiconductor sector and other related practices. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Miller says the U.S. has a wide range of options on China. He says we won't allow China to take manufacturing capacity from the U.S. And China's U.S. embassy spokesperson says China urges the U.S. to cease discriminatory restrictions and jointly uphold the consensus reached at the high-level discussions in Geneva. And then White House Deputy Chief of Staff Miller says China should seek the path of cooperation. So it's just like ping-ponging back and forth, like, hey, the U.S., you're doing this wrong. And then the U.S. is like, hey, China, just cooperate. It's like, I think you really need a Trump-Xi phone call at this point. I think Scott Bessent was on to something there. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Miller says the U.S. Trade Representative Greer and Lutnick will provide details on China. Japan says we confirmed progress with the U.S. in trade discussions. And here you can see that headline, U.S. goods imports fall 19.8% month over month, the biggest drop on record. And Miller says that Trump's hope is that China will choose the path of cooperation and common ground. Fitch Ratings today says the U.S. prime credit card performance is weakening amid economic uncertainty. So again, I think there's a lot of good news today. There's bad news today, specifically on trade talks with China. It's really hard to discern between like, is today a good or bad day? I do realize markets are trading lower, around a half of 1%. And again, it's pretty even across the board. Stocks tend to have, are at least tending to have pretty high correlation with each other. Apple's down 0.77%, Amazon's down 0.76%, Google's down 1.2%, Meta's down 0.3%, Microsoft just went red. Nvidia's a real underperformer today, down about 3.2%. Probably has to do with some of those comments around semiconductors and China. You see Tesla's down around the same as the headline S&P, down about a half of 1%. It's kind of just a typical Friday kind of day. We did talk about this on the channel previously. Like, today was going to be a big day, and it wouldn't surprise me if today was a really good day, or just not a whole lot came out of today. And really, I think the bottom line in this market, you have to be prepared for the unexpected. You have to be prepared for this market to take off to the upside on one good headline, and you have to be prepared for this market to stall out here. You have to be prepared for this market to move down to the 100-day or 200-day moving average around the 575 level. Now, I'm very bullish overall on markets. I think Wall Street is really only focusing on the potential for negative outcomes. They're not looking at the potential positive outcomes. But again, in the very short term, even though I think we're going to get a 20% rally on the S&P from here into year end, I think the S&P is going to close around 700 on the SPY. Anything can happen if you're looking at just a couple of day period. And I would go as far as to say today was probably more good news than bad news. Exclude those China headlines, and I think markets would be doing very well today. The percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average falling a bit today to about 64.5%. Still on the relatively high side, but kind of in line with normal like bull markets, even though you're technically like not in a bull market. Kind of in line with the typical market we've seen in the past couple of years. The CNN Fear and Greed Index, again, as a contrarian indicator, is falling from 63 yesterday. At one point, it was at 66. It's really been in the 66 to 68 range for the past week or two. You're falling to your lowest level now at 61. Market momentum, extreme fear. Stock price strength is greed. Stock price breadth, extreme greed. Put and call options, fear. Market volatility is neutral. Safe haven demand and greed, and junk bond demand and extreme greed. What's very fascinating about the put and call options here, and some news that we got earlier today, hedge funds and institutions are piling into shorts again. It's like they think this market is tapped out. And remember, I'm going to paraphrase this here, but there's lots of sayings on Wall Street that go something like this. You have to, stocks, without a wall of worry, stocks cannot go higher. You have to have problems that get solved and people to be wrong to get stocks to move higher. Like, without a wall of worry, that's when stocks tend to come down. Because if everyone's expecting good news and there's nothing to worry about, and then, oh crap, it's not as good as we thought, then people get disappointed to the downside. When everyone's worried, when everyone's in shorts and scared, and then boom, next thing you know, you get good news, stocks move higher. And that's usually why being a contrarian is seen as the most, positive, fulfilling outcome. When everyone's bearish, it's probably a time to be bullish. When everyone's bullish, it's probably a time to be bearish. And right now, almost everyone from, a major money perspective, hedge funds and institutions, are bearish. Even here in the AI Investor Sentiment Survey that asks investors one question, quote, what direction do AAII members feel the stock market will be in the next 6 months? Like a second grade level survey here. It's one question. You can't really get it wrong. 32.9% say bullish, 25.2% say neutral, and 41.9% say bearish. I mean, besides last week, the bears have outpaced the bulls and have had higher, overall percentages for like 2.5 months. And it happened again yesterday. Bears are outpacing the bulls by almost 10% again, where neutral investors are historically high from, kind of where we have been at the last year or so. Okay. There's a lot of bears. And with that, I think stocks can go higher. Now, in the news today for Tesla, Drew Baglino, former senior VP of Powertrain and Energy at Tesla, has completed a $38 million Series A funding round for his new company called Huron, which aims to develop next-generation transformers for electric grids. Former Tesla CFO Zach Kirkhorn and current Tesla board member J.B. Strobel participated in the round. Vanguard, which owns $90 billion of Tesla stock, announced today it will roughly triple to 10 million the number of investors eligible to direct proxy votes in their funds, continuing an effort that would reduce the firm's direct impact on shareholder elections. This is good news for retail investors. So it's basically going to give more people a say in Tesla's voting, essentially. Instead of Vanguard having the control, it's pushing the control a little bit more towards who actually owns the stock, not just the company that oversees who owns the stock, if that makes sense. Hyundai is preparing to increase the price of all of its new vehicles in the US by 1% starting next week to cushion the blow from tariffs imposed by President Trump. Now, Elon Musk did a presentation about going to Mars last night. Okay, I'm not going to share all the details with you just to save some time here, but he wants to get a flight going to Mars here over the next couple of years, and wants to have it with Optimus bots being the first to go and the first to set up operations to make it easier for humans to get rocking and rolling when they actually get there, which is pretty cool. Morgan Stanley analyst Adam Jonas said that during his presentation last week to around 200 investors in Japan, he began by asking for a show of hands from anyone who owned a significant amount of Tesla stock. Not a single hand was raised. He repeated the question, encouraging the audience to speak up in case he had missed anyone. The room remained silent. Adam says, quote, "We believe the challenges facing Tesla's current business are widely reported and well known, while the opportunities in the future business are potentially greatly underestimated." And I think this is also some pretty big news. Tesla China has announced free FSD and enhanced autopilot transfer for Model 3, Model Y, Model S, and Model X if buyers take delivery of a new Tesla by June 30th. Tesla is now offering its Everyday Hero discount program in Canada, previously only available in the US. This program recognizes the contributions of first responders, students, and teachers, giving them $1,000 off the purchase of a new Tesla. Elon Musk, in a new interview on the Trump administration, says, quote, "It's not like I agree with everything the administration does. I agree with much, but we have differences of opinion. There are things I don't entirely agree with, but it's difficult for me to bring that up in an interview because then it creates a bone of contention. So I'm a little stuck in a bind where I'm like, well, I don't want to speak out against the administration, but I also don't want to take responsibility for everything the administration is doing," which I think is fair. I think that's been a big problem that Elon has faced, is like, hey, he's kind of associated with everything that the administration does, and he only likes certain parts of it. Now, at the time of recording this video, Tesla's stock is down about 1.3% as markets are slipping a little bit further. Again, I still think this is part of the process. This is still a technical breakout for Tesla. You're still above 350 at the time of recording this video. You're at about $354. Nothing changed today from the overall thesis, right? If anything, it's just further validation that the economy is continuing to do well with some of those personal spending numbers that came out. Like, today doesn't change any of my thesis on why I think markets are going to go higher, why I think Tesla is going to go higher. I mean, shoot, we have the robotaxi launch coming in about 2 weeks. Nobody even cares. Most of Wall Street probably doesn't even know that that's happening 2 weeks from now. So give it a little bit of time. Give Tesla a little bit of grace here. But ultimately, I do think hedge funds and institutions are getting this wrong, and I think they're going to be on the wrong side of this when Tesla really does explode higher over the next couple of months. I think Tesla could be a $600 stock by the end of this year. I know, sounds crazy, but again, just give it a little bit of time. Keep in mind, I could be wrong. That's not a recommendation. Do what you guys need to do for your own personal situations. But As far as today and option activity from hedge funds and institutions, you have seen 181 different trades totaling $189 million with a positive order value of 91%. That is very positive. I mean, 91% positive, that's a pretty good sign. So far here on the day today, you have 16,500 shares that on net are being covered on. You still have 85.23 million shares that are sold short, totaling about $30.55 billion and about 3.04% short interest of free flow. So you do have a lot of, shorts, I believe, on the wrong side of this trade. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. On the prospective downside, we want to see 350 get held as a solid level of support. If it doesn't, then you set up a move down to that 325 level. I'm optimistic that we hold support at 350. If we don't, is it the end of the world? No. I mean, I think this is your accumulation phase in Tesla, right? This is when you want to be getting as much ownership of Tesla as you possibly can. I actually had someone ask me in real life yesterday, like how do you know when to sell a stock? How do you know what to buy? And it's simple. You got to envision the future. I know looking into a crystal ball like Nostradamus is not exactly the easiest thing to do, but there are some things that are relatively easy to see. What's the future going to look like? It's going to look like humanoid robots. In fact, it has to. If it doesn't, society will fail. Why? Because people aren't having kids anymore. By the time, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, we're not going to be able to support all the businesses and, activities that we like to do just because we're not having as many kids organically, right? That's a problem. You need robots to fill in those gaps. Like literally, that's one of the easiest things you can see it. And if you know that, and if you know Tesla's going to be successful in that area, and Wall Street's not expecting that as of now, to me, that just sounds like an accumulation phase. It sounds like a time to build, like it says in the Bible. You reap what you sow. It is the sowing time. It's not the reaping time. So let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.